What is your kid walked in during sex story? I was the kid. I was in high school, so not super young. I needed something from my parents' bathroom. I had no idea they were in their room having sex. I thought they were downstairs watching TV. Walked into the scene of my naked mother on top of my naked father. I said, "Yikes," and hightailed it out of the room. My mother came into my room a bit later and asked if I was okay. I said, "I will be if we never speak of this again." When I was 12, I stayed the weekend at my mom's coworker's house with her 4 daughters and 1 son. The son had 2 of his friends over as well. While we were all in the basement, the son and his friends pranked us, so we ran upstairs to tell his mom. When we burst through her door, she was on the receiving end of some back shots from a gentleman call as she snuck in, lol. That scared us even more, so we ran back in the basement. Now that I think of it, I don't even think they stopped. She definitely never came down to check on us. My mother did not find out until she went to work that Monday. I never went back over there again. Which sucks because other than that awkward moment, I actually had a great time. Not me, but a cousin. She heard her grandma moaning, so she thought she was hurt. So she ran downstairs to check on her. Then she walked in the room and saw her grandma on top of her grandpa. She is still scarred. We have one of those baby monitors which connect to the phone. Naturally, when we moved our son's crib from our room to his, we started sleeping with the monitor connected all through the night. Also, our bedroom became somewhat more active with him gone. One night my wife wanted to make things a bit more special, so she put on some lingerie, had some music playing, and danced for me. I was half undressed with her on my lap when suddenly the loudspeakers crank and make a sound like starting a holly. As it turned, the phone and with it the baby monitor were plugged into the sound system, and our son had passed wind loud enough for monitor to pick it up, and then it got amplified by the system. So naturally, I had a laughing fit, and my poor wife wasn't best pleased about her farting son and his infantile father. My wife's mom is over. She decides to be nice to me, so sends her to the park with our daughter. Then my wife orders me up to the bedroom and to strip and wait for her in the bed. I do as I'm told. Wife puts on some nice little sexy robe thing. Thankfully nothing too kinky, more cute. Proceeds to climb into the bed, and at this point just tells me to lay back and relax and is going down on me. Just in the nick of time we hear footsteps running up the stairs. So she pulls back, throws a blanket over me, and then curls up beside me, like she's hugging me, then throws her leg up over me to hide my happiness. Door opens, and it's our daughter, who had to come back for one more hug, jumps up in the bed, sees us hugging, and comes in for a family hug. It was so uncomfortable and weird, and then daughter takes a long time, so grandma comes up to make sure everything is okay, walks in and just stares at us, and knows immediately what is going on. Could have been much worse, but that's the one and only time before locks were put on doors. Christ, I was at my dad's as a preteen, 12, 13ish, and it wasn't even nighttime, it was early evening. I was in my room and writing in my diary. I had visited a museum earlier that day with dad and his wife and forgot how the name was spelled, so I went over to their room to ask. I even knocked at the door and heard yes, which in my country is equivalent to come in when someone is knocking. So I opened the door and see my dad on top of his wife, thankfully covered waist down with a blanket. But the truly weird part was they tried to play it down like they weren't doing anything, so as I start apologizing, they just go, "No problem, what did you need?" So I play along with the general awkwardness, ask my stupid spelling question, get my answer, say thanks, quickly leave and remain in my room for the rest of the evening. I did not write that part down in my diary, as I was pretty sure I wouldn't soon forget it. D. My story is from the other side of the proverbial door. But once when I was young I was scared awake by a horrible nightmare. You old to cry, but not too old to need to go and sleep in my parents' bed for the rest of the night. I picked up my favorite teddy bear and made my way to my parents' room. Just about to open the door when I heard the sounds coming from the room. Decided my nightmares would be less harrowing than walking in on them. So I covered my bear's ears and begrudgingly took myself back to bed. Moved home to care for my mother who had a stroke and needed assistance. While there, I hooked up with a girl I'd had a crush on during high school. She was a single mother with a 3-year-old daughter and lived in a mobile home with thin walls. Her kid walked in while we were banging. Girl was upset thinking I was hurting her mom. Mom took her back to bed. It was a while before she came back. My hard-on was long gone. Resumed 6. Girl walks in again as her mom is sucking me. Mom takes her back to bed and again takes a long time to settle her in. At that point, I needed to be home to check on my own mother, so I got dressed and left. We had uninterrupted sex the next week, but the whole situation was kind of depressing. My son was about 4 the first time he walked in on my husband and I. He ran out of the room screaming. I saw buds moving in the dark. Silence. MSEC equals 2000/6 and 4-year-old at the time. Walked in while we were having sex. Door to our bedroom was locked. However, the bathroom has 2 doors, one from the hallway, one to our room, and the door to our room has to be pulled pretty hard for the latch to click. Anyways, 8 months pregnant with their sister, and I was on top. We thank God keep the blankets over us, because for some reason we enjoy sweating like it's a workout. Just leaned forward immediately and asked what they needed. Juice was the answer. Told them I'd be right out. They shut the door. I hopped off, pulled down and up my nightie, and went to get them juice. Husband was still ready to go. When I got back, crap happens. They're learning how to knock, and that door was fixed pretty shortly after. Not exactly a kid, but it was when I lost my virginity. I was 17. We had just finished, both lying on our backs in the pitch black dark. Her younger brother, 3 years younger I think, walked in and said, "Hey, not my name." I was mortified. She said, "It's not my name, go away." Was pretty awkward when I went downstairs to him and their mother sitting on the sofa. I was staying at my best friend's house when we were teenagers. His parents had a rule that he had to check in with them before bed. This would ostensibly stop us from underage drinking and smoking marijuana cigarettes. Anyways, we come home all freaked up and he goes to do his check-in. He comes back white as a ghost and after a few minutes explains that when he opened their door he just saw his dad blowing his mom at warp factor 9. Tits out all jiggly and the whole 9 yards. The next morning they came downstairs while we were eating and decide to discuss it with him right in front of me. When adults love each other they show it with physical affection or no blah blah blah. I was so uncomfortable I just picked a spot on the wall to stare at and eat my Fruit Loops. My girlfriend, 42, was riding me, 28. We both just came and her autistic son, 19, walks in. He comes sit on the side of the bed and starts talking about Power Rangers. Not sure if he knew what was going on. I was horrified. Lol. When I was 17, my whole family went up to our cottage. This included grandma and great-grandma. There was a couple in the cottage next to us who brought their niece with them. She was like 15, but really cute. We ended up hitting it off, mostly because I had a car and a motorcycle, dirt bike, and was like the only person on the lake near her age. After a few days of flirting and whatnot, we ended up hooking up. We made out a bit on the boat and decided to take it into the bedroom. This was at like 4:30 in the afternoon. As we're getting frisky with one another, both buck naked, my great-grandma walks into the room, assuming I had gone in to take a nap, to let me know dinner was almost ready. Grandma saw what was going on, doggy style, and giggled. She then proceeded to tell us not to worry, she wouldn't tell anybody, and that she used to do the same thing all the time when she was younger. She died having never told anybody. I was 3, too short to get a cup from the elevated cupboards and get a drink of water. My sister wouldn't do it for me, so I disobeyed the stay downstairs directive and have an image burned in my head of my parents having sex. It's been 30 years and it's still in my brain. Oh man, this is quite fresh in my memory. TL, doctor, shouldn't let your kids have sleepovers. We have 2 kids, a son, 9, and a daughter, 3. Last year my son's best friend in school left to go to another school and moved 10 to 15 miles away from us. We make an effort to make sure they get to see each other though. Luckily for us, he's a sweet kid and his folks are pretty cool too. We'll call this kid L for the purpose of explaining. Not too long ago we had L over to spend the night. We took them out to see a movie and get some food, then let the boys play on Minecraft for a bit before bed. The kids go to bed, and as it's a sleepover we let them put a movie on for lying in bed. Me and the wife are laid in bed watching some Netflix, and we start getting handsy. Now I should explain that our bedroom is basically a throughway to the toilet, which adjoins our room. So if the kids need to go, they are coming through our room. As such, we've developed a couple of habits before any sexy time. Namely, we go and check the kids' room to make sure the kids are truly asleep first. Second, we shut our bedroom door because the slightest bit of noise from that door gives enough warning for us to bail out of any compromising positions. So my wife gets up and goes to check on the kids. They're all asleep, game on. She comes back in and this was the defining moment of this story, ladies and gents. She forgot to shut the door and just came straight over to the bed, threw the covers on the floor, and started going down on me. Not long after we are well into the swing of it. Remember, the door is wide open and the covers are now on the floor. I've got her on her back with her feet next to her ears when we both heard a soft noise. Before I even had chance to look, my wife let out a yelp and pushed me off her before rolling off the bed and wrapping herself up in the bed covers, leaving me completely exposed. I roll around and both Elle and our son are stood there. Elle is going to the bathroom and our son is asking if they can have another movie on because they couldn't sleep. I did my best to let it slide, got up and put some pants on before going back into the kids' room to put the TV back on. I returned and my wife is in some sort of weird cocoon in tears, which is a mixture of embarrassment, horror, and laughter, repeatedly asking me what Elle is going to tell his parents. Somehow I managed to talk her down, and we finished the deed, and thankfully weeks later nothing has ever been said by Elle's parents or either of the kids, but by God, did it drill it home that we need to be more careful. So I was dating this girl with kids, one of whom was crap, I dunno, he was freaked up. Loved the little guy, but he'd try to run away from home in the middle of the night, bang his head on crap. Hell, once he silently made a pile of furniture next to the front door in the middle of the night, so he could reach the lock we'd put on the top of the frame. Then he went and ran naked laps around the block until soon up. I think he was 4. Anyways, he ended up with a lock on the outside of his door at night. Yeah, I know. And he turned to kicking the door until someone would come. When they stopped coming, he kicked until he broke his little toes. So he had to wear little soft booties to bed, and the bottom of his door was covered in 6 inches of fluffy foam. Apparently sometimes he'd spend hours softly kicking the foam. Eventually it escalated, and he started clawing at the door too. They weren't even sure if he was awake for it, and he was the sweetest little fella during the day. So anyways, I'm plowing his mom in the next room, like balls deep, while she's tied up like a modern art exhibit. For reasons that will be obvious once you try it, we are in front of a wall-length mirror. I'm up on one leg, and she looks like a cat that just slipped off the ceiling, and I'm just getting my second hand inside when the mirror falls on my face. Like, 1 second I'm looking her in the eye, and then there's a bang, and then suddenly I'm falling, while looking in a mirror that's also falling. By the time I manage to sort myself out and look up, it looks like a 3-foot tall assassin is busting through the drywall. Little leather gloves and boots are banging through, making puffs of wall dust. Crap is flying everywhere. I'm surrounded by broken glass. She's helpless. Her door is locked from the inside because of the other times that her other kids barged in. So we are basically just stuck there watching as he smashes a big hole in the wall between the 2 bedrooms. Anyways, that was the night that I learned everything I told you at the start of the post. Not a kid but my mom. At my mother's huge house for a holiday, and all my family is there. My wife at the time was riding me, and my mother does that little 2-knock thing and just opens the door. She sees what is happening, but instead of saying oops or sorry, she leaves the door open about 6 inches and just turns her head. So she is focused right on my face and starts asking me questions about breakfast and what we are doing that day. I'm like, do you seriously want to discuss this right now? I'm laughing my butt off. She says, oh, no I suppose not, and shuts the door. Bless my freak of an ex-wife, she just kept going the whole time, didn't stop for a second. When I was like 14, my family visited and stayed at my cousin and her husband's house for the holidays. Anyways, her husband had an Xbox and me being a kid I was playing on it almost religiously, so I was playing in the middle of the night and realized there was one game missing that I wanted to play, and I knew it was in their room, so I get up, knock on the door, nobody answers. I decided to take charge of the situation and open the dang door. My cousin jumped in embarrassment, her husband just sat there laughing, and I stood there shocked for like a second, saw the game, said ah there it is, took it and walked out. I just heard them laugh at it for a bit through the wall, and then later heard them continuing, which was hinted to me by the bed spring squeaking. I was having sex with my ex-girlfriend when my daughter walked in at the exact moment I was finishing. My ex rolled off of me and pulled the covers over herself while I shocked my daughter's brothers and sisters all over my own face on accident. Edit for clarity on that last sentence. I did a big face come on myself. Stories like these comments are why my wife and I lock the door when we go at it. Found out the morning after. I was in the kitchen making breakfast while my So was sitting at the table playing on her phone. In walks So's daughter. Mommy, is Jim 3 strokes PP okay? So, what? Why would you think there is something wrong with his PP? Daughter, well I saw you kissing it last night and you kissed it for so long and Jim 3 strokes was making noise like he was in pain. So somehow turned white and red at the same time. Come on honey, let's go get dressed so we can go to Chuck E. Cheese later. As they were walking upstairs I heard her daughter say, will Jim 3 strokes be okay? I really like playing the games with him. Silence. MSEC equals 2000 / not my kids but my mum. My hubby had been working away and I had picked him up from the airport at some ungodly time in the morning. Mum had stayed over to watch the older kids so I could go to the airport. We get home. We start to get to business. Hubby always went down on me first. I'm just about there when the baby starts crying. I'll let the baby cry for a few minimums because I'm nearly got danged point there. Just at that moment my mum is at the doorway asking about the baby because we had stupidly left the door open. It was dark, but there was enough light coming through the window for my mum to see exactly what was going on. She kind of stood there awkwardly for a few seconds before saying something about checking the baby and me needing to reply that baby was fine. Meanwhile hubby is oblivious to it all as he was enjoying his long-awaited meal. This moment has never been thought of again until now when reading the prompt brought it all flooding back. My parents have not had sex in 19 years. That's how old I am. I was 6'8" at the time. My parents were having a rough patch and dad was cheating on my mom with a mistress. I found them at my parents' room, going at it. Haven't been able to hug or care about dad ever since. Her strongly Catholic father walked in on us while she was wearing half cosplay. Yes, that's a real story. Not 6, but one time I walked in on my grandma changing clothes when I was in 5th grade. She was staying at our house in my room. Thanks Reddit. I had forgot about that crap until I saw this post.